He had faced the harshest deserts, survived ambushes, and carried wounded brothers through gunfire. But nothing in the Marine's life had prepared him for the sight he stumbled upon at a noisy street market. 3 German Shepherd puppies, their tiny heads covered with rough sacks, stood trembling inside a wooden crate. A crude sign read, "3 dogs, $10. Shoppers passed without care, dismissing them like forgotten objects. Then, something miraculous happened. The smallest pup, blind under the sack, stretched out a trembling paw. It brushed against the Marine's hand, soft yet desperate. That single touch pierced his battle-hardened heart and set into motion a rescue that would change everything. Before we start, make sure to hit like, share, and subscribe. And really, I'm curious, where are you watching from? Drop your country name in the comments. I love seeing how far our stories travel. The Marine walked through the crowded streets with a weight no one else could see. To strangers, he looked strong, broad-shouldered, steady, a man who had served his country with honor. But inside, battles still raged. Memories of distant deserts, fallen brothers, and sleepless nights gnawed at him. He wasn't searching for anything that day. He had only stopped at the marketplace to distract himself, to feel the noise of life instead of the silence of his thoughts. Yet even in the bustle, his heart felt strangely hollow, as though waiting for something unexpected. He slowed his steps near a row of vendors selling old tools, fruits, and livestock. Voices bargained, children darted between stalls, and the smell of dust mixed with spices filled the air. But none of it mattered, until he noticed a wooden crate tucked away at the corner. Something about it pulled his gaze, a quiet tug he couldn't explain. He moved closer, curiosity outweighing weariness. That was when his breath caught. 3 tiny shapes huddled together, trembling, their heads covered with rough sacks. A crude sign rested in front, 3 dogs, $10. And suddenly, the Marine's silent battles collided with theirs. The Marine knelt down in front of the crate, his heart tightening as he studied the little bodies. The sacks over their heads were tied loosely, yet enough to keep them blinded and frightened. Their small frames trembled, paws pressed together as if begging for mercy. Around him, the marketplace carried on, merchants shouting, buyers bargaining, laughter echoing in the distance. But to him, it all faded. All he could see were these helpless pups, abandoned, humiliated, and treated as if they were worth no more than spare change. One of the puppies shifted slightly, its tiny body shaking, pressing closer to its siblings. Then, something extraordinary happened. As the Marine reached out his hand toward the crate, the smallest of the 3 nudged forward, guided only by instinct. Its little paw, delicate yet trembling, found his hand through the rough sack. The Marine froze, stunned by the simple act. That touch, gentle, innocent, desperate, cut through his walls like nothing else had. He felt the pup's tiny claws clutch his skin, clinging as though it knew he was its only hope. For a man who had endured war, loss, and silence, this tiny, blind gesture was louder than any battlefield cry. It was a plea. The Marine's eyes burned as he looked at the puppies again. He had seen comrades fall, had carried the weight of battles on his shoulders, but nothing compared to the raw innocence of these trembling lives. The seller barked impatiently, waving his hand as though the Marine was wasting time. $10. Take them or leave them, the man muttered, already turning to other customers. The Marine's chest tightened. He knew he couldn't leave them behind, not after feeling that paw, not after witnessing their silent cry for help. Without hesitation, he pulled out the crumpled bills from his pocket and slammed them down on the table. The seller barely glanced before snatching the money, yanking the crate forward with a careless shove. The Marine leaned in, his rough hands gentler than ever as he began untying the sacks. One by one, the frightened eyes of the pups blinked open, adjusting to the light. Their ears perked, but their bodies still trembled, uncertain of what awaited them. Then, the smallest, the one who had touched him, pressed its head against his palm, as though it already knew it was safe. That simple gesture anchored his resolve. In that crowded, noisy marketplace, something shifted. The Marine wasn't just buying puppies. He was answering a call to protect, to heal, to give life a chance. With the sacks discarded, the Marine gently gathered the 3 puppies into his arms. Their bodies were frail, their ribs faintly visible, but their eyes carried a spark that refused to fade. He walked through the crowded market, drawing curious stares. Some scoffed at him for wasting money, while others whispered that he was crazy for carrying such worthless animals. Yet, the Marine didn't care. To him, they were priceless. As he reached his truck, the pups huddled closer, their tiny hearts beating against his chest. He placed them carefully inside a blanket he kept for long drives, determined to keep them warm. The engine roared to life, and the road stretched ahead. For the first time in months, the Marine felt a strange sense of peace. The smallest pup poked its head out, ears twitching with every sound, while the other two leaned against each other, exhausted but comforted. Mile after mile, he spoke softly to them, telling stories of battles survived and comrades lost, as though they could understand. And perhaps, in their own way, they did. Because every time his voice cracked, one of the puppies whimpered back, as if to remind him he wasn't alone anymore. This wasn't just a ride home. It was the beginning of something extraordinary. When the Marine carried the pups into his home, they were hesitant, their small paws sliding across the wooden floor. At first, they huddled together, unsure if this new place was any safer than the market stall. But he gave them space, laying bowls of fresh water and food nearby, waiting patiently. Slowly, hunger overcame fear. One by one, they stepped forward, their weak bodies trembling but determined. The Marine knelt quietly, watching, his chest tightening as they devoured each bite. It wasn't just survival he was witnessing. It was the beginning of trust. Their eyes, once clouded with fear, now flickered with cautious hope. In the days that followed, the bond grew deeper. Each morning, the Marine rose with renewed purpose. Training sessions became moments of laughter, and soft whimpers in the night reminded him of his duty to protect them. The smallest pup often curled against his chest, its heartbeat steadying his restless nights haunted by war. With every wagging tail, every playful bark, the Marine felt pieces of his own brokenness begin to mend. Saving them had saved him too. These dogs weren't just rescues, they were companions, anchors pulling him out of his own storms, proving that love and loyalty could rebuild even the most shattered hearts. Weeks later, the Marine walked through his yard with the 3 German shepherds trailing behind him. Their fur now gleamed with health, their once trembling bodies replaced with strength and energy. Neighbors often stopped by, astonished at the transformation, asking how he had turned 3 broken pups into confident companions. The Marine would simply smile, scratching their ears, and reply, "They just needed someone to believe in them." But deep down, he knew it was more than that. These dogs had given him something in return: purpose. Every wag of their tails reminded him that his new mission was no longer war, but healing. Soon, word of his story spread beyond the neighborhood. Local shelters reached out, asking him to speak about rescue, loyalty, and second chances. Veterans struggling with invisible scars came to meet him, finding comfort in his story and in the dogs that had become living proof of survival. The Marine realized he wasn't just saving 3 lives. He was sparking hope in many others. Standing on his porch, the smallest pup pressed its head against his hand once more, just as it had that first day. Tears filled his eyes as he whispered, "You saved me too." And with that, a new chapter began.